Hi, this is JS from Movie Clips. I'm here with a review for the new sci-fi film, Europa Report. From the start, we follow a half dozen international astronauts as they just left Earth for Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter. It is believed that beneath its frozen surface could be intelligent life. And so this privately funded mission has garnered a great amount of press. And who's the private funder? Wayland Industries, you might ask? No, but that initial comparison to Ridley Scott's Prometheus is warranted here. Because this film, like that film, which had a second and third act that completely befuddled me, which they probably did you as well, is a technical achievement that's only mired by its script and pacing. Europa Report will likely be completely overlooked come awards seasons, but for me, it's already made my short list for the best visual effects of the year. And that praise is made all the more astronomical when you consider that it was shot on a mere 18-day schedule at the Cinemagic Studios in Brooklyn. From the onset, Europa Report appears to be a found footage film. There's a myriad array of cameras on and off the ship, enough that would make the producers of The Truman Show proud. And then later, handheld digital cameras and helmet cams are introduced. This is just giving us a huge amount of vantage points so that we can see all the action that takes place throughout the film. But then interviews and news footage is spliced in. So then it becomes clear that this is more of a faux documentary than it is a found footage film. And there's a few faces I recognized amongst the crew. You've got Michael Neuvitz, there's Daniel Wu, and Sharlto Copley of District 9 fame. But even though I recognize some of these faces, their realistic performances still completely work for me, and I was seldom brought out of that experience. Copley especially gives what I consider one of the best supporting performances of the year. We'll see if he can bump himself off this list with his villainous role in Elysium, another sci-fi card at the table due out next month. After a technical mishap leads to a fatal accident, a whole new gravity really affects this crew. Speaking of which, Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity, namely its teaser trailer, comes to mind, which itself evoked an unforgettable sequence from 2001, A Space Odyssey. And the fact that I'm referencing Kubrick's masterpiece here should tell you, I'm serious about the visual effects and the realism that's on display here. This is legit stuff going on. In fact, this film is probably more science fact than science fiction, so we might need to create an entirely new subgenre because of a movie like this. But for me, Europa Report completely nailed two sequences, namely the takeoff and the landing. After they are in the clear, upon leaving the Earth's atmosphere, there's this jubilation and relief that overcomes the entire crew. And even back at Mission Control, they cued the Blue Danube, which is a nice nod, a welcome one, back to 2001. And then let's talk about this landing sequence, this inevitable arrival at Europa. So often in science fiction films, we are landing on these terrestrial spheres, but it's not always that impactful. Even from like this year's Star Trek Into Darkness back to a classic like Forbidden Planet, I would say this is probably the most impactful landing since James Cameron's Aliens. And it is so well done. We get to see Europa from outer space and then down on its surface. And we are there on and even below the ice. It instantly brought to mind Werner Herzog's Encounters at the End of the World, a documentary set in Antarctica, which might as well be Europa. In Encounters, we meet the people who have drifted to the Arctic, its small selection of indigenous life, and explore both sides of its glaciated ground. When we go under, Herzog pontificates with the following: under the ice, the divers find themselves in a separate reality where space and time acquire a strange new dimension. Those few who have experienced the world under the frozen sky often speak of it as going down into the cathedral. A quotation from Daniel Wu's character that is repeated in the film is, "Even if we find nothing, it is in fact a discovery." But you can bet since this is billed as a sci-fi thriller, we're going to find something. Now, I really admire the mentality that Ecuadorian director Sebastian Cordero brought to this film, It's a classic tenet of Jaws, showing less is more, especially when it comes to what might be out there. Unfortunately, he's not entirely unbending to this throughout the film's running time. At times, Europa Report's pacing feels like a 500 days of space. We're actually going back and forth, and chronologically, I was lost a number of times. They have the months, the weeks, the days, the hours at the bottom of the screen, so you have to keep track of this yourself throughout the running time of the film. A cut and dry account from beginning to end, yes, that would make it a lot more like a found footage film, would have been more effective here for me. As is, we're treated to the talking head of Embeth Davidtz, who is a fine actress, but here her performance feels just like that, a performance, whereas everyone else is completely believable as a real person. There's something about seeing a film set entirely in space from the black expanse of a movie theater. We're seated in our large chairs like the astronauts on screen, ready to take off, ready to experience something through the silver screen together in the dark. Unfortunately, Europa Report is only getting a limited theatrical release. The film is currently available on video on demand services, but if you are looking for a sci-fi film, especially one with a strict adherence to realism, I would definitely recommend seeking this film out. If your city is showing it, it would be worth the voyage. On the Movie Clips rating scale, I give Europa Report a 78 out of 100. At the end of the day, this feels like a hodgepodge of several science fiction films we've seen before. Everything from 2001, A Space Odyssey, to 2010, the year we made contact, even a little bit of Apollo 18. So if you imagine mixing all of those things together, you can decide for yourself whether that result would be good or not. Again, I said the pacing was sort of all over the place. It didn't entirely work for me, and some of the characters were not as strong as the others. But because of the visual effects, because of the experience as a whole, I highly recommend Europa Report. Thanks for watching. This is JS from Movie Clips signing off.